Welcome back to Alias Teacher TV. This is part 2 of the Alias SubD modeling exercise, the Fiat500. And in this part 2, I will cover the hybrid modeling approach of Alias. I will show you a lot of details, so I introduce them first, and you see what you can expect from this video. The first thing is I will talk about the fillet, which is all along the wheel arch, so that I do that technically correct. Then we have some carryover parts. In this case, we have the door handle coming from CATIA or from an older model, and we have to integrate this into our model. There's additional details, of course, in the front area. So we have the lamps here, two of them. Then we have a cutout in the front for cooling, and we have a character line which goes all along the front. Also, we have some details in the back, which then we have some panel gap. Panel gap means we have the cutout for the door. So, and finally, we have the side glass. Side glass is a technical surface which is specified originally by engineers, and we have to use it for our SubD model. And how? All right, no time to lose. Let's start with the first thing, which is the fillet at the wheel arch. So I go to the result of part 1. And we can see the sharp edge, which is the crease, of course. I go to toggle model and go closer to this. So like that. I can switch off the CVs in this case because I just want to see the surfaces, and I do the fillet. And the fillet is done because we have these SubD limit surfaces with the usual surface fillet command. So we can identify one row in this direction, and of course the yellow ones, and specify the technical correct fillet, which is, let's say, a chordal fillet with a radius of 5 and a form factor of, yeah, let's say 0.5. And then we get a result. Now we have that fillet already done. You have to switch on shading, and if I check the CVs of that fillet, we can see we have that form factor in the middle. The two ones are closer together. It's exactly half the space of the outer ones. So what would happen if we would change something in this case on our SubDs and switch on my CVs again? And a good idea is to go to History Suspend, which is up there, because my 5-year-old laptop is not so fast in recalculating. So that means I just change the SubD first. So I take those two, let's say, and move them in Y direction. So I can quickly change it. Now the fillet doesn't come updated because I suspended update. So now I resume, and the fillet is recalculated by history. Now it's fitting again. So that's the trick. I do an undo, and it goes back, of course, because it updates again. Second topic is door handle thing, so carryover parts, which come from CATIA or wherever. And I move it now towards our sidewall until we finally get contact or just intersection. That's it. Now let's see, how can we do a recess area here? What is the trick about it? Using SubD on one hand and usual geometry on the other hand, cut data. Pretty easy. I just do work like any other Alias modeler would do. I create a plane, in this case, create my geometry parallel to the sidewall somehow. Then I switch on my CVs and create a shape. So I'm looking for the perfect intersection, of course. Not really perfect. So that's, let's say, nice, maybe scaling. And again, surface fillet. So this one, versus this one, and build. And here we go. We get that fillet. And it has history, of course, so I can pick the hulls and do some nice things with them, maybe moving in one direction. And so I can change the shape to whatever size I want and can manipulate the recess area. All right, so now it comes to intersection, the door handle versus the sidewall. Door handle is surfaces, the sidewall is SubD limit surfaces. So I pick both things and make the other ones invisible. And now let's see how we can do the trimming. And take this one, for example, click both SubDs, mark it, discard, and the next one. Click the SubD, mark it, discard, and so on. So I go all around, and it's good in the video. You can do the time warp. So here we have it. That's it. And visible all again. So now it's time for adding more details in the front area. So let's go to box mode and have a look from front. So now the topology has to be changed slightly. So I take those vertices and move them down to where the character line is. Also this one. Now we have to insert some more cuts. So first of all, I want to cut between here, here, and there. And of course, this little line. So another cut goes from up there to there, down here. So now we have sketched what we want. And with an extrude, taking those surfaces, triangle, and also on the other side. Be careful not to take the wrong one. And that one. And we extrude this direction, bit twisting. And if we look at it, pretty nice already. Bring those two together here at the bottom because we don't need that double boundary here. So what we can do is welding those edges together again. So I go to weld and weld to target, welding this point to that point. So we got those, and we need a crease, which is the edge at the bottom here, smiling. And now let's see what we've got. So that's pretty much what we need here in the front. And we can go to the lamps. Starting with the first one, I create a circle and a degree 1 curve, of course. 6 bands, let's say. Put it there somewhere. And just moving it where we can see it, scaling it a bit. So let's check that it's big enough, like that. And of course, should be close to our SubD. Forward. And those series, move them backward. And then extrude. Can pick the object, SubD object, move it a bit to the front, so now everything is visible. Should be corresponding to our picture. All right. The same thing at the bottom. I do it quickly. And then extrude. Here we go. All right. So now how can we connect those additional SubDs for the lamps with the rest of the body? First approach is just the one we had for the wheel arch. So we go there, do a surface fillet, double click it, and in this case a G0 chamfer between the SubD. So go closer because it's 6 pieces. Additional faces, of course, which are involved. So I have to keep them all, take them all, sorry. And then check the arrows inside the yellow one, outside are the magenta. That looks good. And let's say, okay, build it. Let's see what we get. Not so bad. And after that, we need the glass for the lamp inside of this. And so, for example, we could take the curve which we had originally and create another extrusion which we use for the glass. So let's make an extrusion again, small one. Switch on shading and close the up part. So that's the trick about it. So I pick it, hide everything else, go to box mode, and in box mode I close it with bridging. So bridging is easy, so you go to SubD, do a bridge between edges, this one and that one, build it, and not 4 of them, I need just 2 of them, and welding. So that's easy. I just get target weld and pick this point up there and that point down there. And now we have some kind of glass in the smooth mode. So now take this glass, make everything else visible, and move it where you want to have it. So that's one way to do it. Yeah, it could be more detailed, of course, but that's the quickest way to do it. For the second lamp, it's pretty similar with surface fillet, of course, again. Sometimes some retrimming is necessary. Leave out some steps. Now, the most important thing is to get a nice glass for the front lamp. How can we do that? I just take that curve again, which is the circle, you remember, and I do an extrude. And after hitting spacebar, I do scaling. So let's see the shading. A bit more of scaling. And I got that hole in the middle, which I bridge. So I go to bridging, SubDs and bridging. And from left to right. And 2 pieces is okay. And welding again. As you can see, you can do that in smooth mode, of course, too. No problem. If smooth mode is on, The new surfaces won't have shading when you're in diagnostic shade. Now I got that, so I think maybe I pick the CVs and get some overcrown, because that's a bit flat for a front lamp glass. You look from that side. So move that X-wise and take the whole thing and put it in where it should be. And done. That looks pretty good. Next detail we have to model is the cutout in the front bumper area. So I go quickly to my picture to show you where. So this cutout, I prepared already the lines. It's just lines and fillets, which is easy to model. And what I want to do now is I pick the curves here and move them behind. And I identify additionally the surfaces which are involved for this cutout. Hide unselected. And that's the preparation for the draft. Draft to surface, that's the important thing. So picking all the curves, accept, and then one after the other, I click the surfaces. And you can see whenever I click on a curve, the surface is calculated exactly to intersection. So that means I don't have to intersect. I get it perfectly cut. So this is a function which is maybe not known to everybody. So now we got it. And if we switch shading on, you can see what happens. It exactly goes to that sharp edge here. So visible all again. And I can trim now the cutout, which I do quickly without command. To close the cutout, we do a planar surf, chain select the curve, go, and let's see. Okay. The symmetry, I will come back to that later. So next point I promised in the intro is to show how to do a panel gap. So let's go to the sidewall again and switch off shading. And I prepared curves for the cutout, and these curves are NURBS curves. 3rd degree here, or this one in the corner is 5th degree. And they are situated right in the middle of the car. So when we rotate it, we can see this is there. So what we need to do now is to project first to get curve on surface. And because our sidewall is curvature continuous, there will be a chain select possible for our panel gap. So I go to project, curve on surface, and Y direction, of course. And I need to identify the surfaces first. So I make a window selection for all the surfaces which belong to the sidewall. And I say hit go and click the curves. Also select and let's say project. Oh, I missed one surf, which is the one from the wheel arch. Missed this one, go there, take this one, project, and that's it. Now we have curve and surfs. On these curve and surfs, I can drive a panel gap. Panel gap is very complex, so this time I do it the other way around. I first let it run through this panel gap command, and then I explain what values you need to have a successful panel gap. So I go there, identify the curve and surf on this first part. So keep in mind we have a sharp edge. So below the sharp edge, it runs along and it finds it here. Click again to continue. So now we have the complete path for the panel gap, and I accept it. And it shows me some arrows. The arrow is pointing outward, which is wrong. It should be inward. And because I have gap position center line, it doesn't matter if this one, the second arrow, shows up or down. So I start building. So here's the result. I go closer and switch on shading, of course. So we have the two fillets on both sides, and we go inward. So maybe I switch off the display of those two. So now you can see what happened. So we have that fillet on both sides, a short length, and then a connection between so that we can't look through. So what we had is panel gap setting. We had the center line was right here and to both directions. And then we have that distance for the gap, which is 1 mil from here to here. And we have center radius of 3 for both of the fillets. And we have the primary flange, which is 2 mils, and the other one 2, and the so-called closeout flange in the back. One thing which is also important, of course, is the direction for the panel gap command, and that is the vector option in Y direction. That's it. So I have to do it again, of course, and I do that quickly without command. And that's it. Yeah, the panel gap, door handle integration, and on the front area we have the details. So hopefully you're not too exhausted for another detail. One more thing to come. That means we have to do the side glass. I prepared something because I created a curve already, which is the belt line, and that's the section of the side glass. And so how can we create a side glass? Let's revolve for sure. And we have that side glass function. And if you have a curve for a start, then you can choose the option helix. So I take the curve, and I need additionally, after accept, 2 points. So I put this point here on the curve, and the second point maybe up there somewhere. Let's say on that SubD, wherever. Doesn't matter. The first approach is just a little piece of surface, but the most interesting thing is where is the axis of that? Because that's a rotational surface, and here we have that axis right in the middle of the car, and we move that axis just by picking it with the left mouse button and middle mouse button. We can move it. We don't need the move command, so we can change the radius with this. And if we move it downward, then we can change the angle. And just let's go closer to see what happens when we change the angle. By moving the axis downward, we get that nice behavior along the A pillar and C pillar and also roof frame, because now we have a perfect gap, nearly perfect. But that's a technical correct surface which will be combined now with our SubD model. And in this case, I don't do an intersection, I do an alignment. I'll go closer to the certain area where we can see what happens. So now we have that one. And I'll make the surface transparent. You can see what happens. So now this surface, those two, are huge, and there is somewhere an intersection. So let's see. I do an alignment with project, Y direction, and G0. And if I click on the boundary here and on the surface, then it snaps back until it fits perfectly to the surface. Let's see. Here we go. So now we have the surface and it's exactly on the surface. So that's what we want to have. And now I can do quickly all the rest of these SubDs. Okay, now let's trim the side glass. Just go to the side view and let's say trim. Checked, of course, this one. And there are two red dots. So I have to lengthen this one and that one to get intersection on this curve and surface, and then make a marker to keep the glass. And here we go. Now let's see the symmetry thing. We only have half of the car, of course. So we need the second half too. So switching off all the controls of everything, then picking the object, which is the SubD, with the CVs on, and switching to box mode. Delete the history in this case, and then delete half of it. All right, back to smooth mode, and putting everything on this side on a symmetry layer. And now after such a long video, I switch off the canvas plane and I switch on the wheels and finally hit the Make Nice button. And you can see, not bad for approximately 1 hour or 1.5 of work with Alias SubD and hybrid modeling.